on behalf of the Tibetans, and it is also going to go to India, and that India is where the government in exile is. So we cannot think that this is the worst that could happen.
Okay.
And I think if something equally dramatic happens in one of these countries, then I think that it will be switching away from boycotting against French goods towards the targets of other countries.
Yeah, I think that India is potentially a much more sensible point. And just wanted to add to going on to put our viewers onto the news. Even Pakistan today has changed the route, and it will be confined the ceremony to the stadium. So I think the people that organize are getting very jittery about it, and that's where the feeling in China might get another push. And eventually, I think, Wing has a point there. It might switch away from France, but that feeling of nationalism, which is around anyway in China, will then might even be difficult to control by the government itself. Yep. So China itself has an interest to keep this controlled and under a lid. And when we heard the speaker of the foreign ministry, she said, it was Zhengdang, it was.
That's a spokesman of the government. Yeah. What she was saying was, she's not encouraging this action. Actually, I don't think the government will encourage this action. But what she said is maybe the government should take it, the French government or the West media should take it as a consideration. That's what she said. Yeah.
And that's in that, as we said, the media's coined this. This is Beijing's tacit approval of this boycott effort. The government itself won't call for a boycott of French businesses or any, international business.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
No.
But they don't mind if consumers go out and call for it themselves.
Well, the pressure is there at the basis level. So, I think it's a good idea for the government to say, well, we'll let off the steam on the internet. We'll let the people do a little bit of demonstration. You can go on the internet and see on Chinese YouTube how people go out with placards, stand in front of Carrefours. But, as Lucy said, about 120 shops, the 40,000 people who work, they're all Chinese. There's only less than 100 French responsibles. The sourcing of Carrefour is done mainly in China. I mean, the goods sold on the shelves of Carrefour are Chinese stuff, mainly. So, the government has to play it very careful. Let the steam off on the one side, but not let it grow out into a wild, uncontrolled protest.
Okay. I was told we lost our satellite from Washington, but yes, we have, unfortunately. Okay. Just a few minutes left, and there was one issue when I asked Wing Tai about which was a bigger problem for Chinese officials, Sarkozy threatening to boycott the opening ceremony or the destruction of the Paris leg of the torch relay. Having seen or actually really not seen reaction to Sarkozy's threat to boycott the ceremony, but hearing the reaction from the Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson profiled in the report that we ran at the top. Let me ask you, Stefan, if you imagine perhaps there's some maneuvering actually behind the scenes here so that the Chinese can try and ensure that France doesn't embarrass China by not showing up at the boycott's opening, perhaps by reminding France gently that there are billions of dollars worth of Airbus contracts and other industrial contracts that France would not want to lose.
I think there's certainly the Chinese, when they said that friendly relations should be entertained between both countries. I think, that this, when Chinese speaks about friends in the world, it means interests. And so the reminder to Paris certainly, was a sign, and not even a very unveiled sign for that, was pretty definite, to say to Sarkozy, don't overdo it. But again, Angela Merkel, our German chancellor, has said she wouldn't go, but then, of course, she never wanted to go in the first place. So she's not really backpedaling. But again, she's going to receive the Dalai Lama this summer, before the Olympics. So that's going to have repercussions as well. On the other hand, for the big imports, China will need them. China needs to buy Airbuses.
Yeah, they can go to Boeing. They can go to Boeing.
Well, the Dreamliner is making a little bit of leg there. But I mean, for important imports are going to be sourced around the world. Atomic energy.
I'm going to have to interrupt you there, Stefan, because we need to take a 12-minute break now for news and weather. But we will continue this discussion after that point. Our panel returns, so do. Welcome back to the debate on France 24, where we have been discussing what anti-Chinese Olympic protests and boycott threats could actually cost foreign business in China. Joining me again to continue the discussion here in the studio to my right, Stefan Simons, Paris correspondent for the German weekly Der Spiegel.
Good evening.
Here to my left, Lucy Liu, a correspondent for the Chinese Phoenix TV. And joining us via satellite from Washington, Wing-Tai Wu, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Thanks all so much for joining us again. Wing-Tai Wu, let me start with you. Unfortunately, we lost your satellite just before we went to break, and I had asked Stefan about the potential reaction to Sarkozy's threat to boycott the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Do you imagine that there's some kind of maneuvering going on behind the scenes here so that the Chinese can try and ensure that France won't embarrass China by boycotting the opening ceremony? I suggested perhaps they're gently reminding the French that billions of dollars in contracts for Airbus or nuclear power plants are at stake.
Well, one thing for sure is that they might do it. They might threaten, but would they actually go through with it? Because if you think about it, would Sarkozy attending change the attendance of the other leaders that have said that they are unlikely to attend the opening? For example, Gordon Brown has said that he would not be going to the opening. Angela Merkel is not going to the opening. The thing is, if one were to punish France for that, how would that achieve the aims of the Chinese? In other words, would it persuade other people who would otherwise not go, hence come, because they see France being punished commercially? In other words, it's not a I don't know how credible the threat is. I'd like to hear what the other two panelists think.
Okay, Stefan.
Well, I think one point Wing made, and that's important. Sarkozy himself certainly wants to go. The problem is he finds himself in July president of the EU Council, and as such, he's in a difficult position. He has kind of to represent the whole of Europe, and so his attendance, yes or no, is more important as Ms. Angela Merkel's, who never wanted to go in the first place. So that is important, and that's crucial. And he wanted to go, and he only started voicing his doubts about going, not going, and making a linkage between discussions between Dalai Lama and Beijing, for his decision to go or not to go, only when French public came out against China in force. So certainly he personally would get off the hook and find a way around to go to Beijing.
Don't forget that we are in April. We still have 4 months in front of us. So, whether Sarkozy is going or not, it's too early to say that. And he has to wait. A lot of people there, some Chinese, they could not understand why Sarkozy could not always playing. He's going today. He's not going. But we have to understand that France is going to be the presidency country of the 27 countries at that moment. So that will not only be the opinion of a president or of a country of France. That will be he's waiting to see what's happening in the coming 4 months. And plus, there's still something opinion interesting that some Chinese government people, even officials, even some Chinese people, they were saying there's not yet any official invitation from the CEO. So who's being invited or not, who's going or not, it's not a big deal at this moment. Right. Even we don't have Sarkozy, even we don't have Gordon Brown at the opening ceremony, that will not change a lot of things. In truth, most of Chinese people, they don't care whether there will be Sarkozy or not in the opening ceremony. What they care is the feedback, the reactions from the French government towards Tibet. But for example, what they care the most is they were seeing the deputies, French deputies, hanging their regional Tibetan, which is just a region, the flag together with the French flag. That's something annoying them the most.
Lucy, sorry to interrupt, but still the fact that if at this point, as early on, you're right. I mean, there's 4 months to go. Many things, a lot of water is going to run down the Rhone and the Yangtze. But still, it's important that there's a question of face involved. And so if Sarkozy comes out because of Tibet and says, no, I'm not going to go, this certainly is going to have an impact on the relation.
There's a question of the face, which is important for the Chinese people. Well, but we have to see that the Chinese government, state television, they are accepted to show all the pictures of the flame. The only Olympic torch were destroyed. Were